Hi everybody, TJ Mac Vintage Cards here, and today I'm coming at you with a video speaking to what I enjoy about my collection. This is just an ongoing series of videos I do where I talk about what I enjoy about the cards I have in my collection and just how my collection is really further evolving, as I've talked about sometimes in previous videos, buying cards that are just beyond the Hall of Famers that really speak to the history of the sports that I do collect. And one of those today that I'm showing off is this 1961 Topps card of Norm Cash. And Cash was the first baseman with the Detroit Tigers for most of his career. He started off with the White Sox and had a very brief stay with the Indians. I don't even think he played a game for them. But he played in baseball from 1958 to 1974. But it was this season right here, the 1961 season, which was the best of his career and one of the best of the 1960s. He led the league in batting average with a .361 average, which was the highest batting average of the decade. He also hit 41 home runs and drove in 132, and he even stole 11 bases. Now, his wins above replacement were higher than Roger Maris, who was the MVP that year, and he was also right in line with his teammates Al Kaline and Reggie Colavito, who all had the second, third, and fourth highest wins above replacement in the American League, behind only Mickey Mantle. Now, I think Roger Maris deserved the MVP that year based on all that he went through, but Norm Cash had an outstanding season. And he was a very consistent player for the balance of the 1960s. He was the only American League hitter to have 20 or more home runs each year from 1961 to 1969. He finished his career with a .271 average, 377 home runs. He was a five-time All-Star. He won the World Series with the Tigers in 1968. And he had over 1,100 RBIs in his career. And he's also a pretty funny guy from what I understand, just reading some stories about him. And just one of those situations occurred in July of 1973 at Tiger Stadium when Nolan Ryan was pitching a no-hitter that game, and he struck out 17 batters. And his nickname was Stormin' Norman Cash, came up to the plate as the last hitter of the game, and he carried with him a table leg up to the plate. And the plate umpire, Ron Luciano, told him he couldn't use it. And Cash responded, "Why not? I won't hit him anyway." And he just tossed the table leg aside. As you see, Cash earlier in the game struck out 3 times against Ryan. But apparently it did not faze Ryan that he came up with the table leg, because he got Norm Cash to pop out for the final out to preserve that no-hitter. So just a real interesting, fun guy. Al Kaline always said he enjoyed him. But what I'm trying to do with my collection is build these groupings, as I've shown again in some other videos, and Norm Cash fits right in with that because those 3 players in that Tigers team are just really intriguing to me. That was an outstanding Tigers team that year that finished second to the Yankees, who I think won 109 games, but the Tigers won over 100 as well. And I got the Al Kaline already, and I'm going to add the Reggie Colavito to this group so I can have these 3 great players in my collection where they're going to reside. And these are just, this is the direction that I'm really going in now, being I have a lot of the Hall of Famers and everything that I want to have. I just want to really deepen my collection. So real excited to add the Norm Cash here, and now I'm on the lookout to get an Al Kaline so I can have this super trio of 3 Tigers from the 61 season. And it's just one of the groupings that I'm working on. It's just how my mind works to piece together these exciting teams or moments or players within baseball history. I just think these look super side by side. One of the other projects I'm working on is collecting the sack leaders throughout the years that I collect from 1950 to 1989 of football. And I've just always been intrigued by pass rushers, and the NFL didn't officially count the sack as a stat until 1982. But really has come to light recently is Pro Football Reference, which is one of the main sites that you go to look up NFL statistics, is now accounting for the unofficial statistical records for sacks. And what you find when you see that is that Michael Strahan and T.J. Watt are not the single-season sack leader. It's actually this gentleman right here, Al Bubba Baker, who had 23 sacks in 1978, and he was the Defensive Rookie of the Year as well that year. And he did that in a 16-game season because 78 was the first year the NFL went to 16 games. And Al Bubba Baker had over 100 sacks in his career, unofficially again, but really should receive some strong consideration for the Hall of Fame in my view. And now that they're have these numbers in place, it'll enable the Hall of Fame voters to maybe see these players in a different light, which I'm excited about. And how they got those numbers is they went back and looked. It was predominantly done by research through football historians John Turney and Nick Webster. They just looked at tons of game logs and films, and then they pieced together what they thought the sack totals should be. So that's how they got to the 23 for Al Baker. And there is it's not an official stat, but it is something that's now being shown in the site and can give you an idea of how good some of these players were. And then right next to him is another player, Jim Caviage. And these are players, and this is another thing I'm showing here. These are not expensive cards. You can get them raw or graded. And these are just wonderful cards to have in your collection. The Norm Cash, the Baker, Caviage. I mean, Jim Caviage was the first player to ever have 20 sacks. And again, unofficial number, but they went all the way back to 1960. And he did it in 1963 where he had 20 and a half sacks in 14 games. He also led the league in sacks in 1962. He was a 3-time Pro Bowler, a 2-time All-Pro, who won a championship with the Giants in 1956, and appeared in 5 other championships, which were all Giants losses. So he played in 6 championship games. And he played with the Giants for his entire career from 1956 to 1968. And he finished unofficially with 91 and a half sacks. But again, he started his career in 1956, so there's 4 seasons there, which we don't have his sack totals. So it's in all likelihood, he finished with over 100 sacks. And just a guy that, to me, is under the radar and somebody I just love acquiring cards of and adding to my collection because this is the story of the history of the NFL, which I'm looking to capture and display in my card room during the football season. So the other thing I'm doing with this card is I can take this Caviage and Al Baker. I can add the other sack leaders of the time, like Deacon Jones and Coy Bacon and all these other guys, and I'm going to show a video with them another time. But I can also add the Caviage with other super giant players from that era. And I'll just narrow this down here a little bit. So you can see here the Sam Huff and Emlyn Tunnell. And they also had Andy Robustelli as well, which I could also display in this picture. But you just get these pieces of these great teams, and it just makes for a wonderful display when you can show them off, and just really captures the history of the cards at that time. Next player I want to talk about is Reggie Smith. And as you can see him here in his 1968 Topps, which is his second-year card with the Rookie Cup on it, or Rookie Trophy. And then next to that is the 1979 Topps. And right fielder Reggie Smith, he was a 5-tool player in the 1960s and 1970s. And it was Don Sutton who famously noted that Steve Garvey was not the best player on the Dodgers. It was Reggie Smith. Now, Garvey was definitely the most popular player, but Sutton, he wasn't alone in that assessment of Reggie Smith. In his prime, he had decent power, speed, was a very smart player who always knew how to get on base. And in retrospect, it's real hard to find any really criticism of his game. He never really stood out in any specific categories, but he could compete with the league leaders across the board just because of his talents. And I think he's one of the most underrated players, frankly, in baseball history. And if you were putting together a list of all-time right fielders, he would have to be, I would think, in the top 20. He was a 7-time All-Star. He played from 1966 until 1982. He had 287 in his career. He had 314 home runs. And for his career, his wins above replacement was 64.6, which is above Dave Winfield, Vlad Guerrero, Ichiro, Enos Slaughter, and 7 other Hall of Fame right fielders. He finished in the top 5 MVP voting 2 times, and he won the World Series in 1981. So this is a player, again, that I want to have in my collection because I think he was one of the greats of his time and somebody that should be reflected. And just look at these wonderful cards. And you get this nice action shot of him with the Dodgers. I'm a big fan of the 79 set. I mean, I got this card for $5. And then I got this Reggie Smith. And again, I don't talk about prices a lot, but just to give you an idea, the Reggie Smith was about a $20 card in a grade 8. The Caviage I got in a grade 8 for $12. So these are just cards that are not really expensive, that really could deepen your collection, or just a lot of fun for me to collect right now. And what I'm doing with the Reggie Smith is I'm going to take him and then I have some other Dodgers players from that era. And you can see here the Steve Garvey, and then you got next to him, you get this nice view of these three of the greats of the Dodgers. I'm going to add some other ones to this just so I can capture those late 70s, early Dodgers teams that were so much fun to watch. Here's a card of Lionel Taylor. This is his 1961 Topps rookie card, and it's just a beautiful card in this old AFL Denver Broncos uniform, the brown and yellow jerseys, and they wore these ugly striped socks. You don't see it in this picture here, but just one of those classic AFL uniforms of the day. And this card here is one, and again, I'll tell you the prices just because I'm trying to make a point. I think I paid about $25 for this card a few months back. I think this card has a lot of room to grow because he was just a fantastic receiver of his era in the AFL and somebody that is really under the radar. I think he's one of the most remarkable football players personally that I've read about. He started his career as a linebacker with the Chicago Bears in 1959 and just did not want to play linebacker. He was a wide receiver in college, so he left the Bears and he signed with the AFL Denver Broncos. And in 1960, he started his time with the AFL. So what did he do his first year? In just 12 games, he caught 92 passes for 1,235 yards and 12 touchdowns. And then as a performance in 1961, he was the first professional football player to have 100 receptions in a season, and he did it in just 14 games. And again, this is an era where the passing game is not what it is today. Even though the AFL had a reputation for being a very open game, it still would not compare to what we see in the NFL today. And Taylor was, just a great receiver of his time. He led the league in catches, I believe it was 4 years in a row, and 5 of 6 years he led the AFL in catches. Now, he played up until 1968. He ended his career with the Oilers. And after the 65 season, he just began to break down with injuries. But he really is somebody that never received the Hall of Fame consideration he's deserved for as good a receiver as he was at that time in the AFL. And I think he's somebody that in the future could get some Hall of Fame appreciation and eventually get inducted. So this is a card that I just wanted to grab now because I'm starting to build more of the AFL players into my collection because I'm just fascinated with that league. I've been watching a series on Showtime that was out a few years ago on YouTube, and I'm just enjoying learning about these players and reading articles on them as well. So I'm going to add him in here with 2 other AFL receiving greats that are in the Hall of Fame. And here they are here in Lance Allworth and Don Maynard. And then I put Lionel Taylor right in the middle there. So, again, where I'm going with my collection, just having a great time putting these types of cards together and love putting these videos out. Hope you have a great weekend, and we'll talk again soon.